Hello, thank you for joining us for starting a business in Illinois. This workshop is being hosted by the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, and we are going to discuss a couple of things today to help you start your business efficiently and legally. The first is we're going to talk briefly about idea feasibility and determining whether or not you should move forward with your idea. We're next going to talk about the parts of a business plan. We're going to also discuss the different types of legal entities and the differences between them. Next, if you're in Illinois, this will be specific to you, but we will talk about the business licensing process for both the city of Chicago as well as any state registrations that might be required. Finally, we're going to talk about different funding sources that are available and how you can contact the appropriate entities to get the money that you need to start your business. So let's go ahead and get started. Before you can talk about the feasibility of your idea, I just want to make sure that you have this very simple checklist that you need. Now, this is not everything that you need to start your business, but it does go over most of the basic things that you will need. So you need to create a business plan, which we'll discuss the parts of the business plan later in the presentation. Form your business legal entity. Register for your tax identification numbers. Again, apply for any business licenses or other registrations that your municipality requires. And then open a business bank account. That's generally the last thing that you will do. But again, this list is not comprehensive. This is just the basics of steps that you need to take to be considered a business in the state of Illinois. So let's talk about idea feasibility. When you're thinking about whether or not to move forward with your idea, what I always like to tell people is that, of course, you think your business is a good idea because it's your business. But the key is whether other people will think it's not only a good idea, but they're willing and able to pay for whatever service or product you are offering. So in determining the feasibility of your business, some things to take into account include how much will the business cost. Now, this isn't just the amount of money that it will take. So we all have heard of startup costs. You'll need to pay rent, you'll need to pay utilities, you'll need to pay for materials, you'll need to pay for marketing. But beyond that, there is an additional cost to starting your business, which is time. How much time do you have to dedicate to the start of your business? And this is a real important thing to take into account. If you're working 40 hours and you're not willing to give up your nights and weekends to start your business, then your idea just may not be feasible because of that. It takes time as well as money to do that. And if you don't have either of those, then your business may not be feasible at this time. The next thing that you need to consider is what is your own risk tolerance? Entrepreneurs are risk takers by definition. You don't know how your business will turn out, but you're investing in it such that you hope that it goes well. You can plan for things that may come up, but if you have a very low risk tolerance, then this will be a very stressful, even more stressful endeavor. Taking on or starting a new business is stressful in and of itself, but if you are not the type of person who are able to look at risk, weigh the pros and cons, understand that the cons may be heavy and still move forward, then your idea may not be best for you to proceed with at that time. The next question you need to ask yourself is, can you get the resources that you need? So again, this is financial resources, but it's also, can you develop the partnerships that you need to operate this business? Do you have access to the materials? Does the technology exist and is it affordable? All of these things need to be addressed if you are going to determine if your idea is feasible. So for your business, whatever that might be, you need to come up with a list of what those resources are. And if you do not have access to them, figure out a plan to obtain access to them. There's very little that someone else can do to help you identify what those resources are. You really have to do your homework to say, I need this type of technology. I need this type of partnership. I need this type of material. and making sure that you have a plan to obtain those. If you do not, and you don't have any way of getting those resources that you need, then again, your idea may not be feasible at this time. That is not to say that you won't gain the relationships or gain the partnerships or have access to the funding that you might need at a later time. But before you can even determine whether a later time is even possible, you do have to come up with that list of resources. The next question to ask yourself is, how long will it take? Now, this is different depending upon your business, whether or not you've worked in the industry before or this is your first time out. But taking into account how long will it take is very important. And it's not just how long it will take to start the business. It's how long will it take to make money in the business. Because most businesses, statistics show, are unprofitable in their first year. That's not to say that they're not making money. It's that the money that they're making isn't enough to cover the expenses that they're taking on. And so how long can you sustain that? If it is an issue for your business, how long will you be able to maintain not making any money or not making enough money to cover your expenses? Or have you done the research to say, these are my goals. If I reach these goals, then I'll be able to operate a profitable business by this date. Knowing what that date is, are you able to operate and live and eat and all those other things that we need to do while you wait for your business to be profitable? If you are not able to wait as long as your projections state that it will take, then again, your idea may not be feasible at this time. But if you are, great, you've just conquered another obstacle in your business. And then lastly, what's your goal in your business? Most businesses, as you can see from the quote, provide a lifestyle and a job, but they don't provide wealth. That's not to say that your goal can't be wealth creation. It absolutely should be wealth creation. But taking that into account, I know the quote is that it can take 20 or 25 years to become an overnight success. Now, we look at outliers like Facebook and Uber, which became large multinational corporations in the matter of a few years. But the truth of the matter is, for the bulk of businesses, it will take a long time to reach the point where they're creating wealth. And so just have a determination about what your goal is. Some people's goal is, I just want to be able to send my kids to college. I want to be able to live in the neighborhood that I want to live in. But it's good for you to take stock of what that goal is at the onset so that you can be sure that your business will help you reach that goal. If you operate a single convenience store, it is highly unlikely, while not impossible, highly unlikely that you'll become a $1 million operation. But if that's your goal, you may need to think about a new type of business. So that's what that means, is making sure that whatever your goal is, your business is such that it can help you reach that goal. So these are the basic things that you need to consider. There are other things about feasibility. I do a whole workshop on how to determine if your idea is a feasible one, but we're not going to discuss that today. This is at this time, if you can answer these questions and you're okay with the answers, then your idea may be feasible enough to move forward with. So now let's talk about the business plan. Again, this is the thing that most people start with. I believe that it is important to have a written business plan. While it shouldn't be a 20 or 30-page document, depending upon the type of business that you have, it should at least cover these areas. And we have tools that are available to help you answer specific questions within each area. But these are the primary areas that you need to concern yourself with. So an executive summary, although it's first on the list, is the last thing that you complete. Company information about your industry to show that you have researched it. Competitive analysis to show that you know who your competitors are. Product and service description, what your marketing plans are, how you plan to operate your business, the management team and who's going to be doing the activities that you outline. The financials, again, these are projections to the extent that you have not been in business yet. If you have been in business, then you should have financials available. And then your growth and exit strategy. Everyone's growth and exit strategy is going to be different, but you at least need to have thought about what's going to be the next step for your business. So let's talk about the description of your business first. The first thing that you want to discuss is the name and stage of your business. So that's exactly what it means. The name of your business and what stage of development. Are you pre-revenue? Are you at concept? Have you received investors? Those are the things that you need to outline in the stage of your business. Next is goals and objectives. What is it that you want your business to accomplish? In one sentence, what is the problem that your business is solving? If you can do it in one sentence, if it'll take a number of sentences, that is what goes under there as well. You discuss your legal entity. Again, we'll discuss the basic legal entities later in this presentation. You give an overview of your management team, who is going to help you build this business and what is their experience in doing so. You give a description of the products and or services that you are offering. To the extent that you have identified your unique competitive advantages, what you need to do before you start business, you want to bullet point them here, and then you'll go into more detail about them in your competitive analysis, and then you'll talk about growth opportunities. So where do you see yourself 2, 3, 5 years from the start of your business? At this time, I'd like to say if anyone has any questions, there is a chat box as a part of this webinar. Feel free to enter any questions in the chat box, and I will answer them as I receive them. So now that we have the basics of the description of the business, now we're going to the part that most businesses get stuck at, and that is the marketing plan. And the marketing plan is not just about the activities that you're going to use to market. While you do discuss if you're going to use social media, if you're going to do commercials, if you're going to do video marketing, the biggest thing about this area is that you've researched your target market so that you know the best ways to reach them. For example, if you're selling stockings and women wear stockings, you know that you shouldn't market in comic books or that kind of thing, right? Because boys don't wear stockings, that's who read comic books. And so your marketing plan, while you have one, it will be ineffective. And that's a drastic example. But the key here is that you really need to know who your target market is, who is likely to pay for the product or service that you are creating. The thing that you also need to note about your target market is that the target market can differ from your customer. So for example, if you're selling toys, children play with toys, but children don't buy toys. So your target market would be parents of children who play with toys of the age range that you create. So it's very important to get that clearly understood and articulated as a part of your research. And when you think about the identifying your target market, you need to go beyond the basic demographics, right? So women or men aged 21 to 45, they are somewhat educated, they have some kind of degree or what have you. You need to go more in depth in that. You should say, what are their likes and dislikes? How often do they buy? When they buy, how much do they spend? How do they like to be marketed to? These are the types of questions that you need to be able to answer about your target market. If you can't answer these questions, you won't know the best way to market to your customers. For example, if we use a stocking, ladies stocking product as an example again, yes, your woman is probably a white collar worker, meaning they're somewhat highly educated. They work in an office building. So it might be a good idea to market on billboards in their office buildings, something like that. But if you just say, oh, they're women wear stockings, that doesn't give you enough information to go on to prepare your marketing plan sufficiently. The next part of this is your industry. What are the current trends in your industry? If you can't show that you know what the industry is doing, how the industry is moving, then it's likely that you'll be left behind even before you get started. So again, if we're using the stocking examples, in the past, it may have been that, stockings came in one color, but now the trend is moving such that they have different designs, they come in different colors, and you've done that research. So if you have not done that research, you might say, oh, I'm just going to sell regular stockings and women buy them because they need them. But if that is not how the industry is moving, again, you'll be left behind before you start. That's different from competitors. So an industry is a broader overview of maybe it's the hosiery industry. Competitors are those who are direct competition for your target market. So if a person has a choice between going between you and another company, that is your competitor. And it's important for you to know what they're doing, how much they charge, what do customers like about them, what do their customers not like about them. You need to know your competitor's business just as well as you know your business so that you're able to identify your unique competitive advantages as well as where they might be missing opportunities that you can take advantage of. So I hate it when I hear businesses say, well, I don't have any competitors. The way to think about this is that your target market is doing something to solve the problem that you're looking to solve, right? So we could say that Uber didn't have any competitors because Lyft didn't exist or all these other ride-sharing companies. But they did. Before they started, there were taxi companies, there was public transportation, people could walk. People were solving the problem of getting from one place to another before Uber existed. It's not that they're not direct competitors, but again, people had a way to do what they need to get done. That's what you need to figure out when you're identifying who the competitors are in your space. And then the last thing that your marketing plan should cover is your business model. How do you get your product and or service to the customer? So there are direct sales. I like to akin these to the Mary Kay ladies. So a person is a representative, goes out to the customer, makes the sale. There's retail sales where a retailer is a third party. So there are wholesalers who then retailers buy from, and then customers go to the retailer to get that merchandise. There's also wholesale. So that would be if you're a B2B business. There are tons of other business models. There's actually at least 26 of them. You need to identify which business model works best for you, why it works best for you, and how you will incorporate it into your business planning. Now, the one thing that is missing here is that the actual marketing tactics. What are you going to do specifically once you've done all this stuff to let your customer know that you exist and that they can buy from you? You do need to come up with marketing tactics, but you can't do any of that until you identify these primary 4 areas, and then marketing tactics you'll choose based on the available medium that's available to you, how much your budget is, how often you want to market to them. So this would be where you identify, well, we'll use social media, we'll use billboards, we'll use commercials, whatever that is, you'll identify the tactics after you've done these primary things. So next, the operational plan. This is the part of the plan that most business owners forget about, but this really tells you how you operate your business. What I want you to think about when you're thinking about creating an operational plan is if somebody had to run your business, if you were not there for whatever reason, you're sick, you're trying to pass this down to your family, this is the plan that shows those people who would step into your shoes how your business is operated. So it's who has what responsibility. What are the responsibilities that need to take place? What are the processes that you have to take, that you have in place? When do things need to get done? When does your trash get taken out? When do checks get entered? Where does the business take place? Are you going to operate out of an office, out of a co-working space, out of your home? And then how are things done? What is the processes, or what are the processes that you have put in place to identify customers, to market to customers, to get customers to buy from you, to deliver on those orders, and then to thank you or to thank the customers once they've ordered? What are all of those processes? So if you have a really good and sufficient operational plan, again, someone should be able to come into your business who knows nothing about it and be able to operate it without too much difficulty. The other thing to note about an operational plan is that this is really for you. If you are looking for financing or investors, they won't necessarily read this part of your plan, but you need to be able to, or you need to know the information in this plan because they may have questions about it. So you need to think about this as this is your sort of game plan how your business will operate. The next part of your plan is your management plan. Who is your team? Especially if you're going out for outside investment, whether it be from investors or banks, they want to know that the people who you have working with you have the experience and capability to get things done. So you're going to have to outline who these individuals are and their backgrounds. The other thing to note about this is the employee structure. What's the hierarchy of your business? Who reports to who? For what purpose? You'll also have a board of advisors or directors. Now, you don't need to have a board of advisors or directors, depending upon your entity type, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if you do have a board of directors or advisors, this is a way to sort of show the breadth of your team without having to hire someone. So maybe you have some friends who are attorneys or accountants who you go to on a regular basis to get assistance for your business. You may want to add them to your board of directors or advisors. But you need to note that if you have a specific type of legal entity and a board of advisors or directors is required, by putting people in those positions, they do have a say in how your business is run. So if you don't want to have that board of advisors or directors, you can add those same people to a professional team. So again, if you have friends or you know of contacts who are attorneys and accountants, maybe you don't want them to have a say in your day-to-day business, but you do want their assistance and you want to be able to use their experience to show that you have what it takes to run this business. You may just put them on a professional team for your operation. So the financial plan is the most important part of your plan. You need to take out of all the areas, this is where you should focus the bulk of your time. This will tell you whether or not your idea is feasible, whether or not you'll make enough money or there's the opportunity to make enough money to reach whatever goals you've set for yourself. Now, if you're a startup and you do not have any paying customers yet, the thing to note here is that the first 3 items are estimated. They're projections, but that does not mean that you can make it up because you think the numbers sound good. They need to be educated estimates. So, for example, what I like to tell clients is with the cost of startup, you might have areas such as rent, utilities, materials, legal services. Those are all numbers that you can actually get, right? So you can say, well, if I'm going to choose rent, I want to be in this office space, and the rent here is $550 a month. That's a real hard number that you can back up. For utilities, you can actually contact the utility companies and say, hey, I'm opening a retail store in the space. Can you give me the number or how much rent was for this space last year, or utility cost for this space was last year? And they may be able to give that to you. So to the extent that you're putting a number down in your estimated cost of startup, you need to make sure that you have researched that number and it's not a number that you just pulled out of your head. The same for income. Now, depending upon your business, you should estimate your income based on your capability, right? So that means if you are selling a service, for example, I'm going to use legal services as an example because people are known to have hourly rates for that business. So if you're going to open a legal office and the only way that you make money is providing legal service, first, let me say before I say that you should have multiple streams of income. However, to make this example simple, I'm going to use just the singular source of income. So the only way that you make money is by providing legal services on an hourly basis. Well, you know there are 24 hours in a day. You're probably working on client work for 5 of those hours, and your hourly fee is $200. So on a daily basis, your estimated income is $1,000. For the week, that would be $5,000, and then for the month, that would be $20,000. As long as you're able to say, well, if I was doing that, I can get 5 hours of work out of one client, and I'm sure to get 20 clients a month, then you've estimated or you've made an educated guess to your income. Now, you may not reach that, but as long as you can state with confidence that you can reach the variables that you have outlined. So you know that based on your prior experience, that it takes about 5 hours of work to complete a client assignment, that you know from prior experience. Well, you already have 10 customers. You just need to get 10 more, which you hope to acquire in the coming weeks or, months. Then as long as you can state that, that is how you estimate your income. The last part of estimated cost is estimated cost. So again, just as with the cost of startup, you also need to estimate the cost of running your business. And it's the same type of educated estimate process. So to the extent that you can guess, if you're selling legal services, I'm going to use another example because I need a product. But say you're selling hats, and you've estimated that you need to sell $100 worth of hats to break even. Then you have to sell $100 worth of hats. It costs you, in order to sell $100 worth of hats cost $5. So you have to sell 20 hats, but your cost to sell 20 hats is $2. So your estimated cost for that would be $40. You have to do that type of math in order to make this financial plan make sense. If you need help identifying the difference between variable cost and fixed cost, you can talk to a consultant at our center to get more assistance with that. But the rest of this just shows what your break-even point is. You need to know that. If you've watched Shark Tank at all, you need to know what your numbers are. What is your return on investment? So if you invest $100 in your business, how much will you get back from customers based on that singular investment? You need to do cash flow. And a part of this is also looking at your personal financial needs. So outside of whatever your business makes, how much will you need to make yourself to pay for those things that are important, like housing and food and clothing? If you don't build that into how much you need to make in your business may not make it or may operate in the black or in the red because you haven't accounted for how much you actually need to make for the business to be successful. So those are the primary sections of the business plan. Now we're going to move to the types of entity choices that you can make when determining what type of entity your business should be. The primary or the easiest type of entity is a sole proprietorship. This is if you're in your business by yourself and you're just looking to start. So you can wake up one day and say, hey, I'm a sole proprietor. I offer this service, and start selling the service. You don't need to register with any office. You can register your business name if you'd like. We'll talk about that later, but you don't necessarily have to. There are some benefits to doing so, but again, you don't have to. The thing to note about sole proprietorships is whatever happens to the business happens to you. So if your business is sued, you're sued as well. There's no separation between your business assets and your personal assets. However, if you're doing a business where the risk is low, so say, for example, you sell socks, people don't generally sue people because they don't like socks. So sole proprietorship may be fine. However, if you're in a business like a restaurant, if something goes wrong in a restaurant, people can die. So a sole proprietorship or a restaurant is a highly risky endeavor. It has the potential to be highly litigious. So a sole proprietorship may not be best for you based on that risk level. The next entity type we'll talk about is limited liability company. Now this is one of the more popular choices because it offers a lot more flexibility than a corporation does, which we'll discuss in a minute. However, for a limited liability company, this separates your personal assets from your business assets while giving you the tax advantages of being a sole proprietor. So typically when you're a corporation, you're taxed at 2 levels. We'll discuss that in a minute. With a limited liability company, you're taxed as one, you're only taxed once. The other thing to note about limited liability company in the state of Illinois is it is the highest price entity to establish in the state. And not only that, it's one of the highest price entities to establish in the country. So to start a limited liability company in the state of Illinois, it costs $500. If you go to our neighbors next door in Indiana, I believe the cost is $35. That does not mean that you can go to Indiana and form your legal entity there. If you are in Illinois, you will need to form your entity, if it is an LLC or corporation, in Illinois, whether you're doing it as a foreign and domestic entity. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail about that, but if you're thinking, oh, you want to not take on the cost of forming an entity in Illinois, you'll just do it in a different state. That does not mean that you won't need to form an entity in Illinois. You'll still need to do that. So now you're just giving yourself more expenses to take on. So the other types of entity choices are C corporation and S corporation. So with a C corporation, that is the primary entity that most corporations are. So it's the most complex of business structures. Again, just like an LLC, it separates business assets from personal assets. And it also incorporates some corporate formalities. So you have to do some things like issue stock, hold annual meetings, record minutes. And that's true even if you're the only officer. So if you are the sole officer, you're president and secretary of a corporation, you still have to have a meeting with yourself, and you have to say, self, these are the things that we're going to do in the coming year. These are the things that we did last year. You have to record those minutes, and you have to keep them on file. Again, with a corporation, whether with a C corporation, you are taxed twice. So what that means is you're taxed at the corporate level and when revenue is distributed to shareholders. So here's the example that I like to use. If your corporation is a C Corp and it makes $100, you're taxed at the federal level $10. So now you have $90 left. Of that $90, you pay yourself $50. That $50 is going to be taxed. Let's say another 10%, so that's $5. So altogether, you've paid $15 in taxes. Now, if you're an LLC or an S Corp, which I'll get to in a moment, you're only taxed once that distribution is made to shareholders. So if we're using the same $100 examples, that first $10 does not come out. The only thing that would come out is when you paid yourself or any shareholders that $50, and it will be taxed at 10%, depending upon what the rate is. And that's 10% as an example. That's not the actual tax rate. So you paid $5 in taxes as opposed to $15 as you would have paid with the C Corp. So then the next entity type is an S Corp. Now, an S Corp is similar to a C Corp in that you do, again, get that separation. Again, that's similar to an LLC. But because an S Corp is only taxed once, there are some limitations to who can file for S Corporation. So one, all of the shareholders of that S Corp have to be United States citizens. You can't have more than 100 of these shareholders. All of these shareholders have to have the same type of stock. You can't have preferred stock options and other things. So then the question that I generally get asked is, why would someone choose, or how does someone choose between an LLC, which again has single taxation, and an S Corp, which also has single taxation? And the difference is, do any of those limits of an S Corp affect your business? So if you're looking to have investors who get preferred shares, or if you're looking to have more than 100 shareholders, or some of your shareholders are other entities, or and not U.S. citizens, then you can't do an S Corp, and so you have to do either you have to do an LLC if you're looking for that benefit of single taxation. The benefit to an S Corp is that it is less expensive than an LLC to form. So if none of those limits apply to your business, you can do an S Corp. You'll be taxed just like a LLC, and you'll have to pay a lower fee. So again, the LLC in Illinois is $500. The corporation in Illinois, whether it's an S or a C, is $250. Then the last type of entity that we'll talk about is partnerships, but I'm not going to harp on this long. There are numerous types of partnerships. However, the thing to note is that generally, general partnerships are just like sole proprietorships, except that they have 2 or more people. So if you want to wake up one day with your spouse and open a business, you're automatic. Well, I won't say spouse. If you want to open up with your best friend, you're automatic, and you just wake up, you don't file anything, and you go into business with each other, then you're what's called a general partnership. It's treated the same as a sole proprietorship as far as liabilities are concerned. The thing to also note here is that as general partners, each partner is responsible for the actions of another partner. So say, for example, there's a partnership, there's 2 of you, it is a general partnership. If one party does something and then is sued for whatever that party does, the other person that is a part of that partnership can be responsible for paying whatever judgment is made. Because again, there's no separation between the business activity and the individuals, and the actions of one partner can have consequences on all of them. Now you'll see something here called limited liability partnership. That is something that you do need to register. However, if you're looking to form that type of partnership, you need to talk to an attorney to determine whether or not that is the best kind of entity for your business. So again, we've just talked about the basic entities here, some considerations to take into account, taxes and liability. Again, if you're not, or if you are looking for a single taxation, there's only a couple of entities that will apply to. Or if you have low or high liability, you can determine whether or not you need an entity at all. The cost, because the cost is different, so you need to take that into account. The protection of intellectual property. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to go into entity considerations. This is more of a thing to note. But if you form an entity, let's say you form it under the name ABC Inc., or I'll do something a little bit more concrete. If you're saying that the name of your company is Another Bad Creation Incorporated, that does not mean that you own the name Another Bad Creation. That ownership of that name would be under a different type of law, which is trademark law. And so you also need to note whether or not you may be infringing on other people's right because of the name of your business. Now, all of that has to do with how you use your business name and those types of things, but you just need to be mindful that simply choosing a name and registering it as your entity name does not give you any intellectual property protection per se. The other things that you need to take into account are the size and complexity of your business. If you're a single person shop, you make socks, maybe you don't need a corporation. Really no benefit to it at all. But if you're hiring people, you are handling huge transactions, it might make sense to identify an entity that works best for your business because of its complexity. And then the last thing to note here is financing. For businesses looking for outside funding, it's important to note that investors just don't invest in sole proprietorships. They rarely invest in partnerships. They typically only invest in entity types or entities like corporations or LLCs. So if you are looking for outside financing, you're going to have to choose one of those entities. And that's true of banks as well. Typically, they rarely invest in or provide loans to individuals for a business. They are typically looking for you to have created an entity for that business before they will give you a loan. So you need to identify where you intend to get the money from and form your business to ensure that you're able to get the money from those areas. So if you do choose an entity after you've considered all of the things that we just discussed, here are some things to note. In order to register your entity, if you're going to be a sole proprietorship or partnership, you need to, the only thing that you're registering is your name for your business. So you will go to the county clerk's office and file what's called an assumed name application or registration. This just says that you can use the name that you want and you'll be the only person in that county or the only business in that county using that name. That does not give you state protection. There's no way to get state protection for a sole proprietorship or partnership. You can only get protection within your county. Now, if you are looking for to be the only person in your state with a name, that means that you can't be a sole proprietorship or partnership. You have to go to the Secretary of State and form either an LLC, S Corp, or C Corp. Now, one more note that I'll say as far as registering for a S Corp, if that is what you choose to do, when you go to the Secretary of State, they do not make the distinction between S Corps and C Corps. They only say, do you want to file a corporation? You file out the paperwork. The paperwork is the same for either one, and you turn that into the Secretary of State. To make the election to make your corporation an S Corp instead of a C Corp, because the benefit is primarily tax related, you have to go to the IRS or the Internal Revenue Service to file an S election. That is what it is called. It is called an S election. So you first form your entity or your corporation with the Secretary of State, and then you take your paperwork and then you fill out a form with the Internal Revenue Service to say, I want to make an S election. It's a 3-page or 4-page form. And then you send that into the IRS. They'll send you something back, and then that's how you confirm that you have made the S election for your corporation. You'll be an S Corp and not a C Corp. Now, that seems like a difficult process, but if you have questions, you can always come into our center or speak with an attorney who can help you with that process. So we're almost done with entity registration. After you have formed your legal entity, you need to do one more thing, which is register for your tax identification numbers. So what that means is there are 2 types. There is a state tax identification number and a federal tax identification number. The federal you get from, again, the Internal Revenue Service or the IRS. It's called an FEIN number, which stands for Federal Employer Identification Number. That number to get is free, and you can apply online. If you want to apply for that, you just need to go to irs.gov and type in FEIN number. You can search it, and then it'll give you the application and the process. For the state tax identification numbers, you only need this if you're doing a couple things in your business. If you're hiring employees, if you're selling a product at retail, and if you're selling certain types of products. In the state of Illinois, as it states right now, we do not pay taxes on services. And so if you're a single person operation, you can be a corporation or LLC still and be a single person operation, but you are only offering a service. You're not selling a product and you do not have any employees, then you do not need a state Illinois Department of Revenue number. However, you're selling products, if you have employees, if you're selling certain types of products, you need to get this number. The best way to find out if this number is applicable to you is to visit the Illinois Department of Revenue website. They have a 2-page form that you can fill out. It asks you questions about your business, and then depending upon how you answer those questions, it will indicate whether or not you need a Illinois Department of Revenue tax number. So we're done with entity formation. Again, if you have any questions at this time, you can type them into the chat box, and I'll answer them at the end of this presentation. The next thing that you need to know is the process to apply for a business license. Now, I've only talked about 2 areas here because we are in Chicago. I'm going to talk about applying for a business license within the city of Chicago and then the state of Illinois. But if you're in a suburb or another municipality within Illinois, you need to contact the city hall of that municipality to determine what processes are necessary to apply for a business license in your area. For the city of Chicago, however, you need a couple of things to apply for a business license. First, all business licenses are handled through the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, which is located in City Hall on the 8th floor. Some things that they will require of you is you'll have to fill out a 2-page form, and then from that, they'll create a customized application for you. Application fees start at $250 for every 2 years generally, but they can go up depending upon the type of business that you're operating. The second thing that you'll need to note is that your business will have to undergo zoning. That is to ensure that your business activity is allowed in the location in which you hope to operate your business. Zoning takes place typically at the same time that you submit your application, even before you've paid for it, because they don't want you to pay for an application only to find out that you can't have your business at the location that you would like. Depending on the type of business that you have, there will be inspections that you have to undergo for that business. So they range from environmental, plumbing, food safety, and health, all of those things. And then lastly, in the city of Chicago, you also can be subject to needing permits. So permits are required in addition to a business license if you have anything on, above, or under the public way. So signs require permits. Sidewalk cafes require permits. If you have, this is not as prevalent in Chicago, but like in New York, they have those sort of underground storage areas that you can get to from the street. If you have that, then you would require a permit. So those are some things to take into account. If you go to the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, they'll help you through all of those processes all at once. The second thing that you'll need to note is for the state of Illinois, generally you may need an additional license, either instead of or in addition to your City of Chicago business license, depending upon your activity. So if you're a professional service provider, such as a hairdresser, such as a lawyer, such as an accountant, you might get state licensing in addition to a business license as well. Sometimes they can be in lieu of, but you have to check the compliance requirements for your license, and that will determine whether or not you also need a City of Chicago license as well. So what we're going to talk about last is funding sources. There are tons of ways that you can get money, but depending upon how much, what you're looking for, and what you're going to use it for, that will determine the best place to start. So I have created this slide to highlight where you are in your stage of development and then what sources of funding are likely to help you once you're at that stage. So when you're beginning, it's going to be very hard to get money from a bank or angel investors. I know we all hear these fairy tale stories of people have ideas and then they get money for them. And that was pretty prevalent in the early 2000s before the dot-com bust. But now you pretty much have to fund your business yourself before you can get money from outside sources. And that's good in a way because it shows to any angel or bank that you truly believe in this idea and you're willing to work on it because you have invested your own money. If you're not willing to invest your own money in your business, why would anybody else want to invest theirs? But here are some places where you can start. So there's self-funding where people use their retirement funds or equity in their homes, or they're paid pretty well, so they squirrel some aside in savings and they use that, or they get money from friends and family. You'll see here that grants is also in there. While grants are available, they are rare. And so you really just need to be mindful that if you're depending on grants to start your business, you're going to be either waiting a long time or not find any funding sources that are available to you. The next thing is angels. Now, these are wealthy individuals who look to invest their own money in businesses. So this would be like your rich uncle if it wasn't an uncle, who invest their own money in business. Then the next is venture capitalists. Venture capitalists typically do not invest their own money. They're what's called institutional investors. So they work with rich individuals and get money from a number of rich individuals or organizations and then invest that money for them. The thing to note about both angels and venture capitalists is that they typically don't invest under certain amounts of money. So angels, you can probably get to invest between $10,000 and $200,000, or venture capital firms rarely invest less than $500,000 in businesses. So you just need to know about those options. Now, banks really can go any place in this funding spectrum. The thing to also note about banks is there are different type of bank-like entities that are called microlenders who might help you by lending you as low as $500 for your business. But it's best to start with banks that you have relationships with. If you are looking for a microlender, again, microlenders start at $500 and they typically lend up to $50,000. Then you can contact our center and we can point you in the right direction. One funding source that is not in here is more popular in the past few years, and that's crowdfunding. So this is where you get money from strangers to help you start your business. Now they can be giving you money in exchange for stock in your business or in exchange for some type of access or a prize or something like that. But if you're interested in learning more about crowdfunding and whether it's a good option for you, I do a whole presentation on crowdfunding, and you can view that at a later time. So what happens if you don't do any of the things that I spent the last hour or so talking about? So here are some pitfalls of not taking the time to plan for your business. The first is you have too high focus on your product or service. And you can be asking yourself, well, how could that be a bad thing? Well, if you have too much of a high focus on your product or service and you haven't taken the time to identify whether or not someone wants to buy this, then you've wasted a lot of time, right? So what I like to give is the example of the patent office. There are tons of patents that people have applied for, they've put money into, they have even developed to some extent, only to find that no one wants it. So you don't want to focus too much attention on just developing a product or service without or to the downfall of everything else. The second thing is little familiarity with your target market. If you don't know how your target market buys or what they buy or how they like to find out about new products, then you're going to fail at your business just because you don't know what it is that they like and how they buy. So you need to make sure that by completing this business plan that you take the time necessary to research everything you can about your ideal customer. The other pitfall to poor business planning is financial projections that are beyond industry norms. Again, this is why it's important to understand your industry. If you go to a banker or an investor with financial projections that just don't make sense based on what the industry does, the size of it, how your competitors are doing, then you're unlikely to get any investment or loan for your business. The next thing is unrealistic growth projections. This falls in line with the same sort of financial projections being beyond industry norms. If you say in year one you'll make $50,000, but in year two you're up to $1 million, that's just unrealistic and no one will believe you. Now, of course, that can be your goal for your business, but don't write it down and show it to others. They won't believe that. And they'll just, and instead of helping you with your business, they'll write you off. And then the last pitfall of poor business planning is a high reliance on one thing. So whether it's a client or supplier or software, if that one thing goes away, then your business is pretty much over. So I know a lot of businesses who've started because they've had one client say, I would hire you to do this for me. If they do that work for that client and then that client goes away, then they no longer have a business. So you can't have too much reliance on one thing, no matter what it is in your business. You always should have backups. And that's what business planning will point out to you. And hopefully you'll take the time to address before you start. So if you're looking for additional resources to operate or learn how to start your business in Illinois, I've listed some of them here. A lot of people will write off the Chicago Public Library, but it's free and it has a number of resources and the librarians are trained to help you. But in addition to that, there are the City of Chicago hosts business workshops. There are incubators and accelerators. Chambers of Commerce host workshops like this one, as well as colleges and universities. Sometimes they have workshops that are open to the public and not just to students. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for participating in this discussion. This workshop was recorded and will be available on the Chicagoland Chamber website as well as other sites on the internet. As an attendee, you will receive information about when and where this presentation will be posted. However, if you have questions before then, my contact information is on the slide here, and you can reach out to me at any time to get more information on anything that was discussed or schedule a one-on-one appointment. So with that, I'd like to end on time, and that's what I've done. I thank you for participating and watching this webinar, and I hope you found it helpful. Have a great day.